Somebody needs, oh, I was about to say somebody needs to record.
Oh, somebody needs to record it?
Derek got it, so.
Oh, okay, perfect. All right. So, everyone's read the case, I'm assuming. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we got thumbs up everywhere. Excellent. Okay, so the first question I'm going to ask is, so imagine you're the bankers. You're the guys who have to decide who to hire. So the first question is, of those four choices, who would you hire? So take a second to think about it. So we'll take like 3 minutes to think about it.
I had written down Natalia and then Andy. I chose those two. Natalia for her communications abilities. Earlier in the class, we had witnessed or read about one guy who could speak Spanish as well as English, and it brought a lot of clients and just a lot more depth to the company. And so I wrote her ability to communicate with those clients, whose first language is not English, would be a tremendous asset to the company. This communication facet, along with the noted ability to negotiate, would be pivotal in many business dealings.
Okay.
Second choice, Andy. I chose Andy because of his entrepreneurship skills. The grades do reflect poorly. That is outshined by his accomplishments, namely putting 2 other people through school as well as himself. SC Cowan would want that dedication at all costs attitude in their business dealings.
Okay.
So.
Do we have a different opinion?
I like James's Natalia as well, but I'm going to go with Ken. I worked at Wells Fargo before, and I feel like having a banker that has maturity, maybe a family life and life experience, can actually help customers. I know, not to discriminate, but it's kind of hard to take financial advice from someone who doesn't have life experience or may not be able to provide, insight than someone who's lived it. Just a thought.
Okay. All right. Do we have 2 Dereks in this class? We have 2 Dereks in this class.
Yes.
I'm just noticing that. Now I'm like, which one was always messaging me? All right, other Derek, what's your opinion?
D2 is Derek Tafula. Is that how you say your name, Derek? Yeah.
Derek Tafula. Okay.
Yeah.
Derek Tafula. What's the other Derek? What's your last name?
Derek Pereira.
Okay, neither of those last names help me. They're both going to be super hard to remember. All right.
Okay.
All right. What was your opinion?
I agree with James about Natalia. I put those same things down here, and then I was thinking about it. Just asked you one from what I saw in that question, but if I had to pick another, I think D2 makes a compelling argument there as well. I also like. I think they're looking for a leader. I think Martin, with his experience that he has, and because he was in the military, and he was an MBA, so he has education as well. I think he's willing to be able to have the discipline, as well as I think as a way he'll be teachable, because he's had to learn how to be teachable to get his degree, as well as to be in the military.
Right. All right. So far we have all 3 people say Natalia is a good choice, and then 1 for everyone else. Okay. All right. So Carla, Ben, and Steven.
I would say Ken.
Okay. Ken and who else?
And Natalia. I mean, it's kind of a toss-up. They all have their pros and cons. I think Natalia is a good choice, and if that's the consensus everyone else is getting. But I like Ken for the entrepreneurial entrepreneurial background, and I think that demonstrates a lot of adaptability and I don't know, molding. That would be my pick.
Okay. Carla, how about you?
Well, I think Natalia hands down. I know that they didn't like that she had an accent, but I think that works in her favor for other markets. I mean, good heavens, she speaks like 3 other languages. But I actually, I really was tossed between Ken and Martin. The thing with Ken is he does have bankers, but banking and finance don't always go hand in hand as far as hours and demand. That comes from somebody who's actually in accounting and whose boss wants to work on Wall Street, and it's a 24/7 job. So if he can commit, then Ken. But at the same time, I think Martin really, again, is a good leader, but can he take direction? That was my concern with Martin, and my concern with Ken was commitment. So.
Okay. Steven, so you kind of late. I'm just asking which 2 candidates you could pick out of the 4 if you had to pick 2, and why?
Yeah, so I was hearing everyone's opinion, and Natalia is a really good choice because it says, like, in the case how she is like the most experienced out of all of them, and she has like a financial background. And the second one I chose is Ken because it said overall like almost everyone who interviewed Ken liked him, and they thought he represented H.G. Cowell really well. So I think that was a good one. The only thing that was preventing him was like family and stuff like that. But then even then they also said you could always work around that because a lot of people who have families know that it's tough working in a job with a family, but you can always go around that.
Right.
And he's like obviously the best choice.
Okay. So with all the information that we have, can we think of any other information that would be useful in making our decision? So we have, with each of these people that we picked, we have only like a paragraph, maybe 2, to describe them. Can we think of any other information that we don't have about them that might be useful? Like, what would you like to know about them?
I would like to know more about their employment experience and also what their interests are.
Okay. Why would you want to know about their interests?
I'd like to know what they are interested in. You know, what they like to do as far as their job. You know, that way they don't just get burned out, because if it's something that they don't enjoy doing and you put them in that job, they're not going to perform well.
Right.
So I mean, it's just like any if you've ever been in a job that you hated, I mean, how did you do versus a job that you loved?
Right.
I think to go along with that as well is kind of, not that you can ask people their emotional stability, but try to gauge how they handle stressful situations, because you're putting them into an intense internship. Like, this isn't like, you know, a 9-to-5 job. This is a 24/7, you're on your phone, you're around a ton of people. So I think knowing more about their personality and kind of like what Derek said about work experience, what situations have they been in that kind of correlate with the situations that they will be handling. I mean, you're moving people's money around and people get really mad when things go bad. So being able to handle situations, what's their emotional level and how to handle it is what I would want to know more about.
Right. Okay. So kind of going off of that, my next question is for the group in general, how would we get this information? Like, I know that's not something we can just say, it's not something we can really gather, but how would we get their employment history, which I guess that's not too hard in an interview, but how would we get people to gauge their emotional status or how they'd handle all that stress? How would we be able to gauge that?
Referrals.
Referrals?
Checking references.
References. Okay.
I think Derek mentioned their interests. I think that goes back to what we find now with employers searching social media. Social media, people tend to be themselves or put on their best face. I don't know. It's all a grab bag, but you'd be able to see how they handle emotional situations in that. If they're, that would be an option. You've also got more interviews. This last hour with the instructor, he had said to one point, more interviews with the person, and someone had chimed in, when in doubt, don't hire. So definitely just more FaceTime.
Perfect. All right.
I have a question on that. And I agree with the social media, but can you technically search them? Does anybody
looking
know?
People up on Facebook? Yeah. Technically, it's not illegal. You're allowed to do that. Basically, I think, as far as I'm aware, I'm in Canada, so don't quote me on this one. I'm going on Canadian law here. As far as I know, in Canada anyway, you can only really use that as major red flags. Like, you can't say, oh, they have a girlfriend that's this, or they have so many kids. You can't, if you're caught doing...
You can't base your decision off of it, but you can search it. But that's the point, is can you make an unbiased decision based upon it?
Exactly.
And I agree with you, James.
So
public information, hence why I don't do a ton of that.
Right.
But
yeah, it's all public information. Like, I had a friend who got at a bank, was being interviewed for a fantastic job at a bank, lined up to get it, and they actually, and I knew the interviewer too. The interviewer was like, yeah, he's shoe in. And then the next day, the interviewer was like, yeah, we can't hire him. It's like, why? We looked at his Facebook. Yeah, he was literally out partying the night before and completely, exact opposite of what he was supposed to be doing. So, and he posted on Facebook. Yeah. There's a lot more details to it, but he did something he wasn't supposed to, posted on Facebook, and everyone could see it. So, not very wise. So, yeah, it's public domain, public information, but I think there is a line somewhere. But if you're throwing it on Facebook yourself, well, you're shooting yourself in the foot. All right, so kind of moving on to how the interview process went. So we all kind of agreed on Natalia pretty easily, and most everyone kind of came to different-ish conclusions, but I heard a lot of people saying Ken. But the interviewers themselves, in the case, why do we all think they came to such different conclusions? Like, they went in and one of them was thinking that it'd be easy, that they'd all come to similar conclusions, but they all were coming to different ones. Why do we think that is?
It talked about like different interviewers being in different portions throughout the company, and somebody that might seem like a really good candidate in like the financial side versus I think they talked about the IT side. And I mean, there's so many different facets within the company that somebody might look like a good candidate for something, like particularly say I'm over, I don't know, finance, or I'm in HR and I'm helping conduct this interview, and because they had 30 interviewers, right?
Right.
And so if there's 30 interviewers, there's going to be 30 people with different expectations and different attributes that they might think are beneficial to the job. And just because I think something is looks good on my end, that doesn't mean that somebody in another department is necessarily going to look at those same traits and attributes in such a positive light.
Okay, so you're saying that because of the diversity of interviewers, that's why there's so many different opinions.
Sure, and I remember like I think they posed a question like, well, say that so and so doesn't get accepted to your team, like how would you feel if they got hired somewhere else? Or I think it was the opposite of that. So they're looking at someone and, okay, well, what if we hire this person and they end up on your team? Like, would you be all right with them batting for you? And just kind of poses that question of adaptability and like where's going to be a good fit. And I like what was said earlier about the interest, because even if I'm good at doing something, that doesn't necessarily mean that I like it, and probably poses me as a higher risk of burning out in that particular facet of the job.
Right. Okay. Perfect. Any other thoughts?
Kind of to add to that, I think if you put things in perspective, if there were 30 interviewers, they found 26 candidates that they all did agree upon. So, I mean, whittling down to just 4 people, and you have to choose 2 out of the 4, I think that's not too bad.
Right.
So, just putting things a little in perspective there.
Okay. They're able to whittle it down and come to an agreement on at least 4 people. Okay.
I think one thing that the article stated was that Chip, the HR guy, had tried to get all of these interviewers to put forth a set list of requirements, and none of them would put forth a set list, and so they didn't have an accurate gauge to judge them all by. That's why everyone had such varying opinions on these candidates.
Okay. So so you're not saying the process itself was flawed, it was that people weren't necessarily following the process. Is that what you're saying?
There was no process. Chip
Okay.
tried to more fully establish a process by which to recruit people. Okay, these are the guidelines that we need, and the managers who needed to make those statements, who had those jobs to be filled, didn't give him that feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of it was off of what they think of the person and how the interviews went, not based upon specific character traits and what would fit in each job, because each job was a little different. I think Ben may have said that each job was different and each employee or each potential candidate would fit differently, but there was no rule, there was no guideline that Chip could create to measure that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So might there be a better way to get to know these candidates other than just these traditional interviews? Because these traditional interviews seem to be giving us very different results here. So can anyone think of a better way to get to know these candidates a little better and kind of come to a better consensus?
The behavioral questions and the reading that we had before this talked about how you can ask questions about like how they would react to a disagreement with their boss. That was a good question they asked. So that's a good basis to start on. Different questions.
Okay.
Different ways. You could have the interviewee or the candidate turn the tables. Have them interview the senior level managers. Let the senior level managers see what's ticking behind their mind, what their questions are. Maybe that'll give a good insight into the people.
And I think. Go ahead. Oh, I was just thinking that's a good way to like judge someone's interest in knowledge and background in the company. If I have somebody and I've been this guy where I was interviewing somewhere that I had no idea about the company, and that same thing kind of happened to me. And I think it does in a lot of interviews where you get to ask questions and the tables are kind of turned, and it was pretty evident that I wasn't super excited about the job because I had no idea what the company was doing, and wasn't able to act excited or knowledgeable or like it was something that I really wanted.
Yeah, I like all those ideas, and I like D2's group interview idea. I think kind of extending and expanding. I did like Schoenberg's, where he was connected already to the university. I think by having relationships or network with them would help as well, by utilizing various, not social media, but actual physical networks to get to know candidates. Because most likely if you're an MBA student, you are involved in different groups and socializational business, what am I thinking? Professional, that's the word I'm looking for. Professional networks.
Okay. All right. That's another good idea, Derek. Get them out of the building to see how they interact with others. Okay.
Would you have them have like potential clients come in, maybe?
I've had job interviews where they get me to shadow them for a day. That's I've had interviews like that before. There's many different ways of doing it. I think you need to, but I think what you need to do is kind of establish a criteria, some kind of baseline that everyone needs to go off of. So on that note, what are the criteria for choosing candidates for SG Cowan? Like, what is their criteria?
I think they stressed company culture. That's
Okay.
a big one.
What is the company culture then?
I can say that I have an answer for that, but I know
Okay.
that that was something they stressed in general.
It said they wanted to have someone who doesn't need to be told what to do. They said this isn't the Navy. They want to have a self-starter.
Okay. And what sort of things are they supposed to be self-starting?
I think it kind of depends on the department. I think
Mhm.
just an eagerness and willingness to not be sitting around waiting for things to happen, but to like make things happen.
Okay. So the leadership section here got me to ask that question. What are the criteria? And it's kind of meant to point out that the criteria themselves aren't very specific. So the the criteria that they give are kind of vague. So the next question I'm supposed to ask is, are vague criteria a good
Sure.
thing to have, or should they be more specific?
I really think it depends on the job. I think in some positions it is about building, like having somebody with a basic knowledge and building a position or building within the company, or laid out straight criteria. So I think it really depends. And in this instance, when you're talking about financial advisors, you're asking them to build their clientele. And at that level, they obviously know that. So I'm just filling in. But so that's what they need to be able to do. They need to be able to sell themselves to be able to have people invest with them. So I think that's part of it, is whether you're asking them to pretty much be a self-starter in building their clientele, or you're giving them A, B, or C to do by the end of the day or project-wise. So I think creating that criteria, whether it's open-ended or not, would have helped. Because it was really vague in what they were actually going to do in the position that they were in the internship. So
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. I know they want someone who's self-starter, someone who, and every business that wants that. Every business wants someone who is motivated and self-starter and all that other good stuff. But in the interview process, do they need to be more specific? Because if you give vague answers or vague requirements, you're going to get a whole variety of different people. So you kind of want people to take it and run with it when they go, but you want them to kind of have a starting expectation of where to start, somewhere to start, if that makes sense. Okay. So moving on. So we want to talk about next is to talk about the school strategy. So what did everyone think about the strategy for selecting schools?
think it was fairly open-ended because didn't they start, the other big companies did not have, the other big companies in the banking field heavily recruited at the top 10, and they chose the number 11 through 25 in hoping for a more diverse group. And I think it's fairly wise, just because they can cast a wider net. There's not as much competition, which is going to give them more candidates. So I think it's very smart in that respect.
Okay.
Yeah, all their competing businesses would fight for the top ones of the top schools, but they would end up getting the average ones at the top schools, which is not a bad thing, but when you expand your pool, like James said, they were able to get only the top from 11 through 25. And those people were more eager to actually work. They were engaged, not only with self-starters and motivators, but they're looking to work for them. So that was encouraging.
One of the things I always like to say is a doctor's degree from BYU is the same as a doctor's degree from Harvard University. You're still a doctor. So I think it was really wise that they went out. Also, it helps create that culture and that connection as well. Like, it gets them interested in the field, and they connect that field with you as a company.
Okay. So what are some pros and cons of this strategy? I think, Carly, you just described some pros right there. So, but what are some cons of this approach that they've been taking?
Well, I'm mostly thinking about how they're rushing the process.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying, let's get everybody together. The weather's coming. You know, I got to be out of here pretty soon. So let's make a fast decision and be on our way. I don't think that's the way you should do things, especially when you're hiring.
Okay. And that actually very, very neatly ties into the next section, Derek. But sorry. No, go ahead.
One of the cons with going with the school too is, again, it might be too wide of a net.
Too wide of a net. Okay.
So taking more time in building and sustaining relationships would be difficult as well. So that could be a con, is the payoff for the time and energy spent on candidates that may go to a different firm.
Okay. So we have a wide net's being cast, and we're being rushed a bit. Okay. So that neatly ties into the next section. So I'm gonna kind of mosey on there. So Super Saturday, what was the overall objective of Super Saturday, or some of the objectives? Obvious one was to hire somebody or hire people. So I'm gonna knock that one out right away.
Let's say the objectives would be to, at the end, hire someone. But then again, Chip was running around to the individual interviews when the candidates were in with the senior managers, and he was knocking on the door, keeping them on task. So one of the things was to get to know the interviewees on that basis. I mean, you've got 4 people, or were there more? There were 26 people and about 30 candidates, 30 managers. So that was a big round table of people. So just getting to know them was an overall objective of that. And I think for the candidates to get to know the culture as well.
Okay. So is it safe to say that getting to know the candidates and picking the best candidates was probably one of the main objectives?
Well, that was the whole purpose of it.
Yeah, that's the point. Now, another objective I kind of want to bring out was the term itself, Super Saturday. The objective was to get it all done in one day. So my next question for the group as a whole is, do those two things conflict at all? it seems like they conflict.
They're
So
rushing.
exactly, they're rushing it. They're trying to jam this entire process into a 24-hour period. And other good point, Derek. You need deadlines, but you also need reasonable deadlines. So was the deadline of one day enough for what they're trying to accomplish?
No way.
No, I don't think so. And I think we all kind of are nodding our heads because, like we just discussed with Brother Bonnie, is you need time to make decisions and pull them into a different situation with a different person. And they're trying to do it on one day. Well, I can keep a good face on for 24 hours no matter who's in front of me. I do it all the time with my family. You know, you put on your mask. And so I think in this instance, it needed to be broken up. Trying to hire, and I see what they were trying to do, but it created too fast of a process, and everybody's just like rushing through it instead of looking at the personalities and really. I liked Derek's idea of the group interview. I mean, that should have been part of it. Is like, I would say, put them in a group and say, let's solve this. You guys solve this. Let's see who the leaders were, who, you know, like if you're going to do a day, add some group interaction, but definitely split it up. I get why they did it, but split it up.
All right. So what are the kind of consequences of doing it this way? Like the way they did it. What are some of the potential blowbacks from they had of asking for all these things but trying to jam it into a poor time frame? Haste makes waste. I like that. I like that saying. Yeah, haste makes waste. Like, one thing that comes to my mind is they could potentially hire the wrong person. Like the person they hired could be not exactly what they're looking for. They could miss something important in there, like something vital to their job. So that's the first thing that comes to my mind. Anyone else have any other thoughts?
Well, if they missed something, just look at what it took to get that group together to make that hiring decision. That doesn't happen that often. And so they need to make sure that they make the right decision in the beginning.
Right. Do it right or don't do it at all.
Well, and the potential cost for, I think it gave some statistics in the other reading about hiring the wrong person, or maybe more so hiring the right person, and how positively that can impact the company. And so I think not only do they waste their time with someone who's not going to be a good candidate for the company, but they also lose out on a lot of money in time and that turnaround time to find somebody that would be better fitted for the job.
Yeah, I think of it as they're missing out on opportunity cost. I think of it as an opportunity cost. They're missing out on someone they're missing on the person they need. They might hire someone who can just do the job, but are they recruiting someone? So that kind of brings me to my next question. What is the difference between hiring someone and recruiting someone?
Stephen?
Yeah. So I think recruiting is a way, it's a process so you can get like the best candidate from everyone that's applying, and you obviously want the final, like the top candidates to be recruited, right? And hiring is just bringing that person into the company to learn like the company ethics and goals and vision.
Mm-hmm. I like
there's like Derek too was saying, integration and having a mentor.
Right. You can hire anyone off the street and tell them, check the box, do this job, but are they really invested or integrated into the company? That's kind of the difference that I see. Anyone else have any other thoughts?
I think of it kind of like sports, where recruiting, you go out and you search and you find the best people for your team. Hiring is you're filling the bench.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I think of when as a difference.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. Like, I'm Canadian, so I'm not really a huge college football guy, but I know that the best recruiters go around. They look for people, right? They don't just hire or get people from their hometowns. University recruiters go everywhere. But I know one guy who got 4 different scholarships because he went out and tried to he went to universities, because universities don't come up to Canada to look for football players. They go down, so he had to go to them. So, and that's kind of what stuck out to them. So it's all part of the process, and I think there's many different aspects and many different angles. So I personally think the hiring is not something that can be put into an exact science, if that makes sense. Anyone else have any thoughts on that? Or want to contradict me?
I do have a question to raise on this. If you're one of the managers that's on there for Super Saturday, what by the 5th interview, like, what are you thinking? Like, that's, I think, what my biggest concern was. Sorry to kind of go back, but that's part of the recruiting is you're like you're interviewing 5 people, and to me they would all look the same after 5 hours.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but after like several hours or something, I am just, my brain clocks out. So if you, personally, I think if you're jamming it all into one day, then it's not all going to click, and you're not going to see those things you're supposed to see. Or you can't give it the focus you should.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yep. And I think also on the recruiting, kind of to pull that back in, is you're looking for those people who are looking for you. Like,
right.
Not just like filling out the application, but who are looking for you. Like you said, your friend that came down to the United States to, try out, and you're looking for those ones that are looking for you. They want to be recruited as well. I think that's part of the process, is to filter that.
Right. Okay. So just wrapping up, what did everybody learn today about hiring and recruiting? Anyone learn anything completely new?
Know what you're looking for.
Know what you're looking for.
Have a specific set of requirements.
Okay. Specific requirements. That's definitely something that I learned. I think the biggest thing that I learned is you can't avoid vague. Avoid vague requirements is what stuck out to me. Reverse interviews. I like that idea. Anyone else learn anything new today?
I think I learned the difference between recruiting and hiring more so on both sides. I think it's a more proactive approach, especially as the economy is doing so well, that in order to get those candidates, you have to recruit, because otherwise you're going to get kind of the but I think that the main thing is knowing what you're looking for and asking the same questions, so you get a good indication of personalities as well as abilities.
All right. Okay. So that kind of wraps up our discussion for this week. How did everyone think the discussion went?
Good.
Yeah.
I don't think I want to be in HR.
Yeah, it's starting to be a difficult job. All right. So how can I improve for next time I have to do the leader? How can I improve for next time?
I think you did good.
Yeah, I think you did good. I think we just need to be a little more awake as a whole. But that's
I am 2 hours ahead of you.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing, is I'm like, dude, kudos.
Oh man, I'm ready to clock out. you have no. Today was. I was planning, like, today's going to be good. I'm going to come in. I'm going to be prepared. I'm going to have read the thing for a few hours beforehand. Nope. My parents needed my help moving to a new house. Okay, cool. Takes about 5 hours longer than I thought it would. Cool. Finally get home. They all look around. It's like, so, who has the keys? I get locked out of my house where I'm sleeping. So it was a fun day.
Well, kudos.
So I don't know about you all, but I'm gonna be going to sleep. And that's another thing I miss about the States. Y'all. I miss that word. No one says it up here. No one says y'all. Such a good catch-all word. Anyway, I'm gonna head to bed. Good night, everybody. It was fun.
Night, guys.
All right.
Right.
Good night, all.
See you next week. Oh, and Derek, you had the recording?
Yeah, I can post that to you.
Okay. Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
See ya.